Welcome, everyone, to the Pro Football Doc Week 4 podcast. My name is Thomas Casali. I'm your host, and I am joined by the one, the only, David Chow, Pro Football Doc. How are we doing today, Doc?
Doing well. Busy weekend, but it was sort of a satisfying weekend to, have the video working and kind of being on our game and some of my nervous, crazy thoughts working out. Believe me, I was nervous on taking Detroit and saying Denver laying 10. I was nervous on some of that stuff, but we stuck.
Yeah, we're gonna get into our picks in a little bit after we run down the major injuries of the week. But hey, Doc, last night you were fired up about something, and I don't think you were alone. Davante Adams, let's start there because it's what a lot of people have been talking about. Took a vicious hit towards the end of that game. Most people thought, I don't know if he has a concussion, but I'm sure he's going to get evaluated for one. You called me up. You said, time this, see how long it was. From our timing, it was 4 to 5 minutes from him being hit to returning to the game. He was down on the field for around 2 minutes, Al Michaels said. That does not give him a lot of time to be evaluated for a concussion. You wrote an article about it. You were not questioning, but was saying, how could he have been evaluated this quickly? Why don't you tell us what some of your concerns about this?
Well, I didn't mean to come off as fired up. Okay. So let me get a couple things. Opinionated. Yeah, sure. And I just feel like that this is something that the NFL can help us with. So the article I wrote was, the NFL has some explaining to do, okay? So let me explain what I mean. First and foremost, I make zero criticism of the Green Bay Packers medical staff or the independent neuro red hat or the NFL or its process. I'm not co-signing what anyone has done. I'm saying I don't have enough information to know for sure one way or the other, and I would like to get it. And I think it behooves the NFL to provide it to us when there's so much hangover distrust about concussions and head injuries, whether justified or not. My simple point is, because there are so many questions about this, why can't the NFL do what they do with the referees, which is the head referee at the end of the game a pool reporter can ask that referee questions. One pool reporter. And it's not a grilling, it's just, why did you make your crew make this call? And they say. And a lot of times that explains some things. I would love the red hat that was on the Packers sideline to be able to have the chance to answer a couple pool reporter questions. I would rather have that than Davante Adams saying, it was wind, it was my chest, and I'm built differently, and that's why I came back more quickly, right? A player is always going to lobby to play. I think it's better for the league to have that transparency, because I don't believe that the Packers or the 49ers did anything wrong in that game. I don't believe the Red Hat did anything wrong in that game. I don't have any evidence to think that they did. But by appearances, there's no question there were a lot of question marks. My questions when I saw it in real time, number one, and stop me anytime. Obviously I am a little fired up if I'm going in this Colin Cowherd type soliloquy a little bit. But in real time, when he got hit, we saw good replay angles where it looked like his head got hit. Yes, his chest got hit. And the Twitter was like, oh my God, he's unconscious or this, that, the other. Look, I'm the first one to say you cannot judge concussions by video, okay? Was he posturing or is his arm just laying there? You can't judge by video. You got to go by the doctors that are there. But to me, there was enough question mark that it could be concussion that I felt like he would get a sideline evaluation and really a screening. And let me tell you, there's a difference between screening and concussion evaluation. The league requires the medical staffs to, whenever there's a potential for head injury, to look at the video from upstairs, from the spotter, and to at least bring the player into the blue tent and ask 5 screening questions. If there's any question based on video or the 5 screening questions, you have to bring them to the locker room for a full evaluation. That full evaluation takes 5 to 10 minutes. The screening questions, indeed, can be fairly quick. Okay, so he was in the tent and then back onto the field within 90 seconds. So he missed one play. He was down on the field longer than he was in the blue tent. So I get the question marks, but
exactly,
and they do have enough time, assuming they looked at the video while he was down on the ground, and assuming that, you know, the red hat looked at the video when he was down on the ground, and assuming they went in and asked the 5 questions, 90 seconds is enough time, but it's very quick. So it had to be very clear that it was chest and it wasn't head. And maybe it was. That's what it sounds like. But why doesn't the NFL just explain it in real time right after the game, as opposed to Park Avenue coming out with a statement the next morning, which, you know, invites the suggestion that there was a cover-up, even though I don't believe there was, right? So to me, if you're doing things the right way, why don't you have transparency? I mean, look,
yeah, Doc, and here's the thing, like, you know, we got to move on to some other injuries. I understand what you're saying, but the problem I have is the NFL talks all about player safety, this and that. All right, I'm sorry. There's no way that guy comes back after one play after that hit. I'm sorry. There just isn't. I know you're not going to blame this guy or that guy, but either we're for player safety or we aren't. That's it. And there's no way that Davante Adams comes back into that game so quickly. Like you said, he was on the ground longer than it took them to evaluate him. I don't buy it.
Well, I hear you there, but here's my counterpoint to you, Thomas. Look, I've been there when things look funny from the outside, but if you let the red hat say, this is why we knew it was his chest. The initial evaluation on the field said this, that, the other. He was clear and cohesive the whole time. I looked at the video and felt like the chest took the brunt of it. He passed the 5 screening questions. We even did a balance test and what have you. And he passed the screening. And I felt comfortable as an independent neuro guy living in the San Francisco area, not as a Packers fan at all, saying what the Packers did was fine and let him go in the game. That would hold a lot more weight.
Yeah.
And it might take you out of your suspicion of
right.
You don't buy it. That's my only point.
Okay. Good point. Now let's move on. We had a lot more injuries this week, some serious ones. One of the most serious, KJ Hamler for the Broncos came out today, tore his ACL. Now that's the bad news, but unfortunately you think there could be some more bad news that he might not even be ready for next season.
Look, one of the things, you're still relatively new with us and we love having you on board and we love your questions and your fresh view of things. We try and be authentic and real. We try not to say things that we don't see. Yes, was there suspicion for ACL on KJ Hamler? Yes. But what we saw in the video, there was only one view, and it was a little bit grainy from a distance as we replayed it. His knee shifted into what we call varus, which indicates an LCL injury. Now, often LCL injuries come with ACL. They're not isolated typically. I didn't want to call the ACL because I didn't have my 95% threshold. That was a worry, but we did see LCL. Now that it's been reported that it's an ACL, what we're saying, unfortunately for KJ Hamler, is that I think it's an ACL with an LCL, making it a multi-ligament. And Vic Fangio did say ACL and some other stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, all ACLs are not the same. And I'm not comparing him to his current quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. But back in 2016, Teddy Bridgewater had an ACL tear and more. And I said back at the time that not only is he out 2016, he'll be out 2017 because it was multi-ligament. Now, we can hope Hamler is a sprain of the LCL, not a complete tear. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Maybe he's better than Teddy Bridgewater, but it is far from a guarantee that he'll be ready for the start of next season. And this may linger on. I hope it doesn't. I hope it's milder. I hope the other stuff is not as major, but I feel for this young kid that he's going to have a long road back, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the Broncos, Doc, are starting to become they're seeing some injuries here, and they're 3-0 heading into next week. They're going to be playing the Ravens, so make sure that you check our site, SIC Scores, ProFootballDoc.com. We'll have all the latest injury analysis and grades up for that game, and so that'll be an interesting one moving forward. One player, Doc, what's going on with the hips this year? The James White suffers a hip injury. He's the third, pretty major player to suffer a hip injury, and we're going to break that down a little later with video. But what did you see there initially?
Well, to me, it was a hip injury similar to Ryan Fitzpatrick, in the same family as Tua Tagovailoa, but not as bad. And he's going on IR. You can book it. The Patriots probably have not said anything yet, and they don't have to, but he's going on IR. The question is when and potentially if he returns this year. I mean, it'll be second half of the season at best. I mean, if you told me he would return sometime in November, I'd say take it, right? I mean, there's a chance for season here. Remember, he's a speedy, quick twitch running back, not an older in the pocket quarterback, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, will make it back by midseason or be available. We hope the MRI results show the same thing for James White. But I think you all find it interesting at the end when we'll compare the three videos, when we analyze video at the end here. But that's certainly an interesting injury.
Okay, and for fantasy owners, my man out of Arizona, J.J. Taylor, looks like he's going to be up next to get that James White role. So, that's somebody you can think about picking up on the waiver wire. A former Patriot, Doc, Rob Gronkowski took another ribs, big shot to the ribs. I mean, Gronk, you probably have to run over with a dump truck to get out of there. Any long-term effects, especially with the big game against New England coming this Sunday?
I don't think so. Look, he already came back to the game. The reports that x-rays were negative. Was there cartilage injury? Maybe. Is he sore as all get out? For sure. Will he be full practice this week? I certainly doubt it. I mean, he's going to miss or be limited. But will he play next week and beat Gronk? Yeah, book it. He's going to take a rib block injection. He's going to do what he can. He's going to bite the bullet and play and beat Gronk. I would not discount him at this point in time. But don't freak out if you start seeing DNP or LPs at practice this week. He's going to make the bell. He's Gronk.
All right, now, Doc, one of the things I love about our site and what we do is we put a lot of importance into the offensive line, which sometimes the national media doesn't. We saw that this week with the Bears, what happens when you have injuries on the offensive line. A big one in Indianapolis, Quenton Nelson with an ankle injury. How long is he going to be out?
Well, I would be surprised if he doesn't go on IR. We can hope that he doesn't, but I couldn't see completely the severity because it was a big pile of bodies. But you have to understand, he came into the game less than 100% with that foot surgery. The good news is it's the same side because that foot wasn't 100%. You'd rather have that side ankle be hurt rather than right foot and left ankle, right? Because then literally no good leg to stand on. So he already came into the game hurt. Eric Fisher already came into the game still recovering, but playing from his Achilles rupture. Braden Smith, their right tackle, was out. Carson Wentz was less mobile. That's one of the reasons we said, based on SIC Score, that the Browns were the healthier side that game and to cover. And now there's no Quenton Nelson. We'll have to assess and see if Braden Smith can make it back. The good news, though, is we're going to end up upping Carson Wentz in his individual SIC Score. He will be more mobile. Week 2, he looked more mobile than week 1, and I was ready to up him even more, but then he got both ankles sprained, and obviously he dropped. But this is an injury that I think is short term, even though it's both ankles. I think Carson will be more mobile this coming week. The question is his offensive line, and we'll have to balance out the two. And like we always say, don't listen to us or listen to me and just follow along. Use the field view and SIC Scores to make your own decisions as to what you're going to do. Factor it in. Like you say, if you're talking about two different running backs for fantasy or DFS, look at the offensive line. Look at the run defense they're playing against. Maybe it helps you make a decision. Whatever it is, use it as part of your tool bag not the rote, here it is and go take it kind of thing.
Yeah, and I have to give you credit. You've been 100% on Carson Wentz dating back to the summer. You said he was going to start all week. I'd have to say you were in the minority there. A lot of people thought, based on the video and that his reaction, you say, I've learned since I've been here, don't judge the reaction. You said,
and Thomas, I had a funny interchange, and this is the one thing, I do still appreciate. Like, I was like, yeah, I was kind of on an island. When he was DNP, I thought he would play, and I think I quote tweeted Mike Garafolo, who said, yeah, Wentz is going to play. And I said, yeah, I kind of was on an island saying that when he was DMP. And he gave me a funny reply saying, me and Revis, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't get paid like Revis Island did. So.
Somebody would be interesting to see Revis Island try to cover. AJ Brown. Now, we mentioned last week, Doc, about I didn't think he was looking all that healthy to begin with this season with the knees. Now he's got a hamstring. I'd like to get your initial thoughts on his injury, but also if you're in a dynasty fantasy league, somebody who has players more than a year, what is your thoughts on AJ Brown? Is he somebody who's going to be chronically injured in your opinion?
Well, yes, from the perspective that will he always get some vet rest during the week, especially as the season goes. Yes, I think that's his lot in life. But he's a beast, right? When he does play. And yes, he's been not as great so far this year. And now he has the hamstring. Injuries beget injuries. And at this point, I'd have to think, I don't know the severity of the hamstring, but I have to think he gets a short break here, trying to get right. But as far as the dynasty question, I'm not a dynasty expert. It all depends on what you can get for him, right? That's the question. And this is probably a sell low time period right now. You're not, you're probably, or buy low time period for him right now. So you might not get what you want. So you might end up having to hold on to him right now, because everyone sees that he hasn't been doing well now with the hamstring. But it all depends on what you get offered, right? If you get offered somebody good, I'd jump on it in a split second, but hard to say.
Okay, so there you go. Doc endorsing trading AJ Brown in dynasty leagues. Me too. Let's get somebody with less injury history. There's a couple other big receivers, Doc, who were injured this week. Let's start with OBJ in Cleveland. Probably nothing serious, but he said his shoulder popped out when he popped it back in. Any concern for you there?
Well, I don't even know that we would have known about it, except he talked about it. We're going to go back and look at video. Is there concern there? There's still more concern about his knee. He did pretty well, right? But he had to. He was the man there. And I think he's going to have his ups and some downs as we keep going. I don't think the full route tree is there for him. He did very well. Kudos to him. He stepped in for Jarvis Landry because Jarvis Landry is going to be out for a little bit. But, he's a guy that I would buy right now. Wait till the second half of the season. He's going to get better and better. And that's what we've been saying all along. So he's trending in the right direction.
Okay, this one looked bad. It might not be as serious as it looked. Tyler Lockett with the knee. He says he's okay, but especially to my amateur eye, the video didn't look good. What do you see there?
Well, he escaped a high ankle, which is good. It looked like he had a mild MCL, which is actually very hard to play through for a wide receiver. Yet he came back. So kudos to Tyler Lockett. But now it's the all-important, how much does it swell? He didn't look completely fluid when he returned to the game, but the fact that he was out there was a good sign. If he can avoid the swelling overnight and so forth, then he'll have a real good chance to be good and pretty effective this week, but we'll have to watch and see. So far, the news is good. Not major, minor at best, but I don't know that I would endorse him playing fully healthy yet for week 4.
And again, with the ribs, JuJu Smith-Schuster ruled out in the third quarter, took a shot to the ribs. Do you think he plays this week?
Remains to be seen. If, he's willing to do an injection, he might be limited or out in practice, and he'll play, assuming it's one rib. Rib cartilage is harder. We need to let that sort out. He did not come back into the game. And so there's some question mark there. But was that partially because of score 2? I don't know, right? By then, I think there were at least multi-scores down by then. So we'll have to see on JuJu. And also, obviously, Chase Claypool was slow to get up almost a handful of times, but we never saw any significant injury. So he just might be a little beat up.
Yeah, and let's stay in Pittsburgh. The Bengals were one of our picks this week, Doc, because the Steelers had the biggest drop in SIC score from one week to the next, which I think is a very valuable tool for bettors and fantasy owners. But Big Ben, there's a lot of talk, get out, retire, you're too old. Do you buy that? Do you think they should go to the backup?
Well, first of all, before you say go to the backup, who's the backup, right? Mason Rudolph or blanking on the kid for Dwayne Haskins from Washington via Ohio State via Washington. I mean, are you ready to go to one of those guys? And think about this. Look, I'm saying Joe Burrows isn't 100% on his knee yet. T. Higgins isn't playing. Here we go, right? But yet we picked the Bengals +3 on the road based off of the 20.9 score drop on the Steelers defense. No JJ Watt, no Highsmith, Tyson Alalu, a key in that 3-4 defense, the nose out with his high ankle /fracture. A lot of Delta change. Joe Hayden just coming back from his groin, and Devin Bush just first game back from his groin, not 100%. They're the ones with the most injuries there. And that's why we picked the Bengals, and that was easy, right? Now, think about this and answer your question about Big Ben. Any quarterback, forget Big Ben, any quarterback who isn't that mobile anymore, any really good quarterback, you pick some of the best quarterbacks. Take Josh Allen. What happens if you put any good quarterback into a situation where, to start with, they're 2/3 pass, 1/3 run? They don't have balance. They have a backup right tackle. They lose their second string right tackle to concussion. They lose their center and play caller. They don't have the strong run game. They're down by multiple scores, and now they have to throw the ball, and everybody knows it, and the defense gets to tee off. And meanwhile, their defense isn't, keeping the other team off the field. They're on the field in quick outs all the time. That's a tough road to hoe for Patrick Mahomes, for Justin Herbert, for anybody. It's an even tougher road for Dwayne Haskins and Mason Rudolph. So I don't know that I would bury Big Ben yet. That was just a very difficult situation for him to be in. But no question, he's not a spring chicken anymore.
All right, before we get to the rapid fire, Doc, two big name running backs dealing with injuries. Dalvin Cook did not play this week because of an ankle. If we go back to Thursday night, Christian McCaffrey with a hamstring issue. They're saying no injured reserve for him. When do you see both of these guys coming back?
I'm hopeful Dalvin Cook this next week, week 4. I think it was close, but just missed, right? That's what the reports were, even though he was DNP. And the Vikings made the right choice, gave him an extra week of rest. He's healthier. Madison gained over 100 yards. They beat the Seahawks at home. So I think Dalvin Cook can come back this next week. CMC, I've said all along, he's more likely to go on injured reserve than come back for week 4. Matt Rule is saying he's not going on injured reserve. I might modify that to say he's not going on injured reserve yet. They've got time. They just got back from their, quote, mini bye. They could literally put him on injured reserve Thursday or Friday if they need the roster spot and have him miss 3 games. They're hopeful he can come back before missing 3 games, but that might be coming back to play in week 6, maybe week 5, not week 4. I still don't think he's making week 4, but to me, it's great news if he can avoid IR, but he's not playing this week.
All right, let's go rapid fire. Quarterbacks. Let's stay in Chicago here with the Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. A lot of issues here, Doc. Dalton didn't play this week with a knee injury. Justin Fields hurts his hand. You got Matt Nagy, whose seat couldn't be hotter, saying all 3 quarterbacks are in play. You say, well, maybe 2 quarterbacks are in play, right?
Well, we said it last week. We said it last Monday. Andy Dalton is Justin Fields' time, and it's for multiple weeks. And look, could he go because of the hand or performance to Nick Foles? Well, that's a coaching decision. It's not going to be Andy Dalton. It could be Justin Fields. He could switch it up and go with Foles. It's not going to be Andy Dalton yet.
Another big name running back, Doc, that's out is Josh Jacobs. Didn't play this week with an ankle. Is he coming back this week?
I think so. I hope so. I mean, he didn't get put on IR. And if he misses this week, then he should have been put on IR, right, for 3 weeks. And I hope he does. A big game against the Chargers this week on Monday night.
Chris Carson is dealing with a hamstring, Doc. We think he left the game. There was some reports it was a hamstring. We didn't see much on the video. 2 carries for -2 yards after exiting late in the third quarter. This is something to watch this week in practice.
Something to watch, but I'm not sure yet that it was really a hamstring versus tightness or a cramp in his hamstring, right? So let's hope for the cramp and see. It's still early season acclimation there. We have to wait and see on that. I'm not ready to say that Chris Carson's going to miss yet.
Receivers, Julio Jones. This is an interesting one. Did not play the second half. We don't know if he's injured or a coach's decision. Mike Vrabel says guys get tight. What does that mean, Doc?
Well, I'm hoping and assuming he means their muscles get tight and they could be more at risk for muscle strains. Look, fast twitch guys, which Julio Jones is, that's how they are fast twitch. They're tight. And yes, if they're tight, that can be a precursor to injury. So maybe that's what it was. I'm hoping that's what he's referring to and not something else, but time will tell.
Let's move over to the Giants, who are dealing with multiple injuries. Darius Slayton, hamstring, left in the first quarter. Sterling Shepard, hamstring, left in the second quarter. Galladay and Ingram aren't 100%. This is another team. Started 0-3, dealing with multiple injuries. Can we expect any of these guys back soon?
For speed guys like that, it's hard with the hamstring. And that's why we tweeted real time. And that's why even at halftime when Atlanta wasn't really winning yet, it's like, oh, well, they have the table set for them for success in the second half. So you lost Slayton, you lost Sterling Shepard to hamstring. Kenny Galladay stepped up a little bit, but he's not 100% with his hamstring and now hip flexor. Evan Ingram, it was his first game back. Saquon broke a nice little run, but didn't have an overwhelming day. His numbers are what again?
16 rushes, 51 yards, and a touchdown.
Oh, he did get a touchdown, but 16 rushes. So his rushes are going up, but 51 yards. That's not
6 catches, 43.
6 for 43. So he's creeping up, which is good, but I don't think he's 100% yet. Well, he made some real good cuts with his left leg, but the right, it's still not definitive. He's creeping up. He's continuing to get there, but not quite there yet. And of course, there's some offensive line issues, right? Nick Gates and other things for the Giants.
Yeah, they look like they're in big trouble right now.
And let's not forget Blake Martinez.
Yes,
or the ACL on the other side of the ball.
One of their top defensive players will miss the season now. So go to again ProFootballDoc.com this weekend. Check out the Giants SIC score. We're going to have a lot of changes there, I would imagine, with all these injuries. Offensive lineman, though, Doc, you led into it. Terron Armstead, elbow injury for the Saints. Early report expected to miss several weeks.
I think you cut out a little bit there, Thomas. Let's try that again.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you mentioned the offensive line, Doc. Terron Armstead for the Saints, elbow injury. Early reports say he's expected to miss several weeks.
Elbow hyperextension, left elbow, hyperextension, subluxation, I think short of dislocation. I think he could probably avoid IR and miss, under the 3 weeks, come back in an elbow brace in a week or 2 or so.
Broncos, we mentioned them earlier. Injuries on that offensive line, something to watch. Dalton Reisner and Graham Glasgow, both hurt this week. Playing against the Ravens or no?
We're still going to look at some videos and stuff. That's going to be an interesting matchup. We picked against the Ravens due to their injuries, and we took the Lions. I know you rolled your eyes at me when I took the Lions, but they almost won outright, and you could argue should have, right? Getting the 7.5, who knows, right? But it was the Delta change on the Ravens dropping that led to that. And the Denver was definitely the healthier team versus the Jets. And I almost didn't take them because I was like, Denver, they've only beat Jacksonville and the Giants. They haven't beaten a good team yet. And they're going to lay 10.5. I was like, that seems like a lot. No Jerry Jeudy, but we did the injury analysis and said, no, the Broncos are the healthier side. So we went with them. And luckily that was a winner for us, helping us to a 6-1 week there. But what's going to happen now? I think with the other Broncos injuries here, and we're going to have to reevaluate, and we'll reevaluate where the Ravens are, if they're on the uptick or not. So don't have a final opinion on that one yet, but that's going to be one of the more interesting games and changes related to health there.
All right, some big injuries on the defensive side of the ball as well, Doc. You know, we mentioned Blake Martinez. Josh Norman, this one seems like it could be serious. Bruised lungs, they're saying. Can you go a little bit? I have no idea what that means. Can you go a little bit more in depth on that?
Well, normally when you spit up blood, there's lots of reason to spit up a little bit of blood, and coughing up blood is potentially more significant. And is it blood tinged or actually blood? But let me tell you, bruised lungs, that's nothing to just poo-poo. And it's bruised lungs, plural, bilateral bruised lungs. I do not see how Josh Norman plays this next week. I know he wants to. And he might even go on IR. This is not something to mess around with. Maybe one bruised lung, you could get bilateral bruised lungs. I don't see how Josh Norman plays this week. So you have Mosley, who's just coming back from his injury. You have number 2, Jason Rhett, who's out with his ACL tear from week 1. You have Kawan Williams with the calf injury, right? Calf injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then you brought in Josh Norman, and now he's out, and your number 5 corner was in and out a little bit yesterday too. So boy, the good news, Nick Bosa looked pretty good, and I think single-handedly kept the 49ers in that game, going up against the third string left tackle of the Packers. Will it be a third stringer next week? I don't even know who they play yet, but the bottom line is I don't know if that's going to be enough. We're going to have to take a real close look at the 49ers and their pass defensive capabilities next week, given the shortage of cornerbacks, et cetera.
2 big name defensive players who left the game in return, Derwin James with a shoulder and Kahlil Mack with a foot. Any concern for them long-term?
Well, I think there's always some concern, but Mack looked pretty good when he came back. Derwin James looked okay. So we hope that all this stuff is minor and they were just out precautionarily. So some optimism so far on them.
Rashad Weaver for the Titans, ankle injury. Vrabel said he will be out a while. The way Vrabel gives out injury information, that sounds like Weaver could be out 2 years. I mean, Vrabel is like Belichick. He doesn't want to give out anything. So if he says a while, I assume that's a while.
Well, there's different coach speak for different coaches. A while, means don't ask me again for a little bit. But, to me in general, day-to-day means week or longer, week to week means a month or longer, month to month means a while. Everyone has their own coach speak lingo, and I think you have to get used to it. But look, there are times where I think coaches undersell, and there's times when they oversell. Depends on what message they want to give. So that's why we still rely mostly on video of the injury itself. That's still our best primary source. And really what the coach says, once again, is in many ways a reaction to the injury. So how do you really read it? So we always want to judge the injury, not the reaction.
And as I mentioned before, Doc, the Steelers defense was our biggest downgrade in the SIC score from 1 week to this week. Obviously, the main reason why was TJ Watt. We said here last Monday, it's going to be hard for him to play with that groin. Then you said on other shows during the week, he's out. So we kind of knew that before Sunday. Any chance he comes back this week, or is this something that could linger for the next 2-3 weeks?
Well, there's a chance. Look, in the best case scenario, I don't see how TJ Watt would have played in week 3. And that's what we were going on. If it's a minor groin, and he obviously missed the end of week 2, is it worthwhile to put him back in, fast twitch guy, getting around the corner, re-aggravate the groin, and now miss him for 4 weeks or more? Or is it better to wait the extra week? So the hope is that waiting the extra week is what he needs and he can return to play. It remains to be seen. I think there is a reasonable probability that he could try and go to try and help rectify that defense, etc. Not a guarantee yet, but he's got a reasonable chance. We'll have to monitor and see.
Okay, so we're going to get into the video of the week. First, let's go. We had a good week with the picks, Doc. And, listen, hey, we say it all the time. We're not touts. You're not a tout. But this is something I think it's important to go over because I've been gambling for 30 years. And I am against any information people try to give bettors that say this is a lock, take this, blah, blah, blah. Because a lot of bettors are down. Betting's not easy, right? And we don't want to mislead them. What we do, Doc, and you can explain this further, we give you something to put in your toolbox, right? Based on health, this is how we see it. The Lions we had this week. We had the Bengals this week. We just missed we had the Packers. We missed a perfect week by a missed extra point from the Chargers. Leave it to the Chargers to miss an extra point and ruin the over for us. But Doc, go into this week and again, how you go into breaking these games down for people.
And yeah, I definitely think about that Charger game more than the other 6 games. I mean, we had over 54.5, 3 turnovers from the Chiefs in the first half, some in the red zone, left points off the board, but then we still were going to make it. And then no extra point. It's like, are you kidding me? But look, is what it is. And our official week record where we do 5 at a picks is 4-1 because we picked 5 of the games and the other 4 came in. But we actually gave honorable mentions to 2 others, but we try and stick to the 5 just because the way we score. So we're 10-5 on the year through 3 weeks. So the honorable mention games were the Browns over the Chicago Bears based on injury, the Titans over the Colts with offensive line issues coming into the game, and Carson Wentz, even though he's playing. But look, I was super nervous. I was like, really? The Ravens just beat the Chiefs and we're going to take the Lions plus 7.5? I thought that number should have been 11.5 or more, 10.5 at least. But I was like, trust the process. The Ravens dropped by 12 points on offense and defense in terms of the SIC score. So, they did well early, but they petered out. And quite honestly, clock timing this, that, the other, saved by a 66-yard field goal. I didn't say take the money line, but, that was pretty easy in the end. We talked about the Bengals with the biggest delta change for the Steelers. The other one, of course, was Denver, which I was nervous laying 10.5, but they came in easily. And Green Bay was closer than we wanted to be against San Francisco, but I think we all saw that Green Bay was the better side that day, even though it required some heroics at the end. And they were getting 3 points anyways on the road. The 49ers definitely were the more injured side. And that's sort of the week. Look, to me, I'm not picking games. To me, the 3 biggest advantages on scores that we had this week were Broncos over the Jets in terms of health, Lions over the Ravens in terms of health, and the Packers over the 49ers in terms of health. Those were 3 pretty solid picks there that cruised. And the other one was the big delta change from week 2 to week 3, the Steelers, the Bengals. And that might have been one of the easier games as well. So the goal is get everyone on the right side of it. Of course, the ball's not round and things are going to bounce against us. And we didn't, to be fair, we didn't have a great week quote picking in week 2, but I felt like the one game we won was a blowout in our favor. The other 4 were coin flips that we lost. I mean, so no one's perfect, and I don't pretend to be. And look, Thomas, I told you, I don't even put any money down. I'm in California. It's illegal to wager, and I'm just following the law right now in California. So my picks are just to play the game for everybody and to be transparent, to show people what's happening. But once again, don't use my picks. Use the information as a tool, be it for prop bets, for fantasy, for DFS, or let's say you love the Bengals for some reason And then you see the injuries on the Steelers. Maybe you go 2 or 3 units on the Bengals, make your decision that way. Or if you love the Steelers, maybe you only go half a unit because you see what we say. Just use it to help you make some decisions as to what's going on.
Yep. And again, I'm going to harp on it again. One of the values to our site is we evaluate every player at every position. The offensive and defensive lines don't get talked about a lot in the national media. When you look at those field views and you see a lot of red on one of those lines, to me as a bettor, that creates some value. And hey, again, we saw it with the Bears down to their third string tackle. Listen, you can criticize Fields all you want. There was no quarterback playing for the Bears that day that was going to have a good game. And we were on that on our field view and our 6 scores, and it paid off.
Yeah, well, and since you're talking about it, let's go to it here. Let's see if I can find it and go to it. Let's see. Christian can edit it. Why do I not? Here we go. For the Monday night game at ProFootballDoc.com, here's the field view and 6 scores that are up. Cowboys defense against the Eagles offense. Here's the other side of the ball here. But take a look here. 3 out of 4 starting defensive linemen. DeMarcus Lawrence, Neville Gallimore, Carlos Watkins, Randy Gregory coming back off of COVID, Jalen Smith stepping in, Keanu Neal tested positive, Leighton Vander Esch sliding over, Francis Bernard, the backup to Micah Parsons, injured, Donovan Wilson doubtful, likely out. There's a lot. The cornerbacks are healthy. So what does this mean? At least for health, the Eagles run offense against the Cowboys run defense, a 30-point difference. So based off of this, based off the scores, and you can look at it however you want, yes, no question that the Eagles, we actually need to make this one red here, Jacob.
Yeah.
Brandon Brooks
Right.
there. But really, the bottom line is the Eagles seem to have a little bit of an advantage going into the game. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and as a Cowboys fan, I can promise you they do not have a lot of depth on defense. So when you see that red, that's another thing that comes into play. How deep are these teams? And knowing the Cowboys like I do, that's going to be a big problem tonight against the Eagles. This Miles Sanders, I think, is going to have a big game fantasy-wise, so maybe go over his prop bets. Well, Doc, you had the screen sharing up. How about video of the week? I always find, again, the hip videos to me are the most interesting ones. You're going to compare James White to the Tua and Fitz injury.
So let's see, let's find it here. So James White video is right here. So this is James White, and this is what we talked about and tweeted in real time. It'll run again here. His right hip, flex position with the defender on his back, jamming the hip into the socket and maybe translating it out. And you see he holds the back of his hip where it may have gone. It's at least a hip subluxation. I don't think he dislocated it. It remains to be seen if there's a chip fracture or labral tear, but certainly the hip went in and out, and you can see that. Now let's compare that to what happened in week 1 with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Here's Ryan Fitzpatrick's injury. Same right hip, defender on his back. Look at that flexed knee, flexed hip, driven into the ground with a defender on his back. He subluxed his hip. One more time here, driven into the ground. And that's why he's not back yet until at least mid-season. Now let's go to the final one, which was Tua Tagovailoa in college. Look at the right hip. Just by chance, it's right. It gets driven in with 2 guys behind him. But look at the difference. Look at the way his knee and hip are held. And look at how the knee is actually shorter because the hip is still out the back. So see how that right knee is shorter at the end there? I'll try and pause it. See how that knee is flexed up and not as long here? That's why his is still dislocated and out, much more severe. I hope James White didn't dislocate and stay out. I think it popped out and back in. So with that, look, it's undetermined yet. He's going to be on IR. He won't be back till mid-season, mid-late season at best. His season could be done depending on what the MRI shows. So we'll have to wait and see. But you can see the similarities there between James White, Fitzpatrick, and Tua. But I'm comparing White and Fitzpatrick more together than to Tua. And that gives you an idea of what we do and how we look at video to determine things. And there hasn't been any word on James White yet, other than he's out. I'm not expecting a femoral neck or fracture, not expecting anything catastrophic, but it is a big time injury. And remember, James White is a quick, speedy running back with a lot of change of direction, not an older crimson quarterback who's more of a pocket guy. So his return is going to be longer than Fitz's.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to see comparing these, from an amateur eye, they just look like hip injuries. But when you break it down, you can start to see some of the differences here and what makes them more serious. And obviously the Patriots, huge game this Sunday with the Bucks. We'll have the 6 scores up. We'll have the field views up. Make sure ProFootballDoc.com. Follow us at ProFootballDoc on Twitter. These 6 scores I think are really starting to come into play. As a better, I'm starting to learn how to really take advantage of these to make money. And, that's what it's all about, right, Doc?
For you guys, I'm just along for the ride. I'm not making any money or losing any money on any of it right now. It's just a passion for me to try and share some, what I call insider knowledge, not insider information, insider knowledge. I mean, the NFL world is different. It's not like college. It's not like high school. It's different. It's not your weekend warrior. Look, you can be the best orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine expert in the world. I feel like I have this tremendous advantage of having been on the other side, been behind the curtain. That's the advantage of looking at some of this. I think it's really hard to look at it from the outside and see all the different nuances. And that's how we can say things like, I think Carson Wentz is going to make it and play this week. Now, you can never be perfect, right? But it's better information. And look, we know in the gambling world, if you're 60% correct, you're freaking a genius and awesome. We know predicting injuries and looking at injuries, we can do that. We've shown over time it's 95% correct on hard calls on video over time. But, it's never going to be perfect. And we try and give the best information that we can.
Yep, and make sure to check us out all week. Doc will have all the breaking injury news and information as more of the stuff comes out throughout the week, more of the injuries. Well, Doc, that wraps it up for week 3. We're already in the week 4. We're almost, in the old days, we'd be a quarter of the way done. We have an extra game this year for the first time. So appreciate the insight as always, and talk to you again next week.
Thanks.